Hello everybody. So I finally have the time to make my HIMSS labs video, and the feel that I have is confirmation of what I thought before, which is HIMSS is on its way to becoming a big tech company. HIMSS is on its way to becoming something like a Netflix or a Spotify. HIMSS follows the big tech playbook to a T, but they do that to disrupt healthcare. This company, in my view, is the future of healthcare. Or, as they say in their own way, totally care, totally different. So they call it HIMSS Labs because they can't really call it a physical. But this is very similar to a physical. In fact, 70% of things are treated through labs, and most of the reason why people go get their physicals is because they want to get access to the labs. So HIMSS is applying the 80-20 rule here, solving the most important part of the physical by having a slightly reduced offer, but not even that much, right? Not even that much reduced, because we'll see that some of the other stuff that doctors do at physicals you can replace with a smartwatch. So we'll get to that in a second. But anyways, what's the offer? So the offer is there's two of them. There's a base plan and an advanced plan. Both of these are likely going to get you many, many more labs than what your doctor would order for you at a physical. So that's point number one, especially in the advanced plan, which frankly is roughly the same price because it's 2x per year and you get more than nearly 2.5 times as many labs. So a very cheap, very inexpensive product. And of course, if you follow these plans, you can track your health trackers, your health metrics. You can track all of them in the HIMSS app. And we have Dirja right here. By the way, love the presentation. Really, really good stuff. And she walks you through the apps and all of the different labs that are done. And the app tells you whether you're in line and nothing's need to be done, or whether you're not in line and you may need to do something. And this is where this is quite genius in my view, because in the real world, you would have a follow-up appointment to discuss your labs, and you would probably have ping-pong happen, i.e. not all doctors are comfortable prescribing GLP treatments, not all doctors are comfortable prescribing a statin or an anxiety medication or anything of the sort, and you can see the app, after it has your labs, it will make a recommendation. So in the case of Dirja, she had 3 recommendations. You could be a candidate for GLP-1 treatment, either microdosing or regular. You could be a candidate for a cholesterol treatment in the form of a statin. And I think that's because Dirja's BMI was showing at a 30 or a 31. So she could also be a candidate for a pre-diabetic medication like metformin, for example. And then the apps, if you scroll through the app also gives lifestyle advice and nutrition advice. And I'm sure the app could say, oh, you could be a candidate for our vitamins or our nutrition bars. So the app is essentially a doctor at this point. And of course, it's making recommendations based on your questionnaires, based on your inputs, but also now based on your labs. And it's beginning to do very, very cool things that, of course, only a tech company could do. For example, they came up with their own biological age calculation, and they tell you your biological age. So this is not a telomere measurement. In the longevity field, they try to use telomere length to deduct your age. This is more of a multifactorial way to measure age, but you can see Dirja, she's 38, but she's actually 3 years older in the app, because the app says she's 41. So, and hopefully with the HIMSS plan and the recommendation, you can get your biological age younger than your chronological age. So this is again the future of healthcare that the industry has not caught on at all. Kind of like a Tesla is the future of cars, but the industry hasn't caught up on that. Well, this is the same way. HIMSS is disrupting an industry that hasn't been disrupted in a very long time, and it's using the classical big tech playbook to disrupt the classical big tech playbook. So let's go through this and let's discuss it a little bit. So in the traditional system, it's recommended you see the doctor every year. It's called the yearly physical. You get your yearly physical. This is the bread and butter for mom and pop doctors' offices or local clinics, that will have, 5 doctors, 10 doctors, whatever. That's the bread and butter, the yearly physical. How does it work in the traditional system, the yearly physical? Well, you get your yearly physical. If you have a more premium insurance, it's likely going to be covered by your insurance company. Okay. Then during your physical, the doctor says, you should get those labs. Then you go get the labs, and the insurance company typically covers a portion of these labs, thousands of dollars worth of labs typically. And then you get a follow-up visit. Most often, sometimes you can get the doctor to call you, but doctors, they want to make the fee again, so they'd rather have you come back in. And of course, the follow-up visit is very, very rarely covered. The follow-up is often not covered. And if you get a referral, that's also not always covered. It depends on your plan. Insurance companies are very happy with the system because they get to quote-unquote overcharge. And quote-unquote overcharging is the only way that they can achieve a medical loss of at least 85% as mandated by the ACA. If they didn't achieve that loss, they would need to either reduce their premium or pay some form of a penalty. So you bet everybody is hitting that medical loss ratio. Because if you hit the medical loss ratio, that means you can charge more in premiums next year, or you can charge more in premiums next year. And so we have this very toxic insurance system which inflates the cost, because the only way for an insurance company to grow is to make sure the prices go up, because they have to meet this medical loss ratio. And so you get overbilling throughout the traditional health sector. How does it work with HIMSS? HIMSS is a 0-to-1 company. So how does it work with HIMSS? Provide 10 times more labs up front. And, if you get the bigger plans, that's roughly that, for, roughly the same cost as what it would cost to have a follow-up visit. So it's 10x cheaper, assuming your physical is not covered, assuming you have a follow-up visit, and assuming you have to go see a specialist. You could be 100x cheaper. Depending on whether your insurance is billed or not. So much cheaper. That's point number one. Point number two, how do they achieve it so much cheaper? They focus on what matters most for your yearly physical, which is the labs. Because how is the doctor going to know if you need metformin? Well, they're going to look at your A1C. That's how they're going to know if you're diabetic or not. Right? How they're going to know if you need a statin? They're going to look at your labs. So labs is usually the main reason why you go get your annual doctor visit. And the over 20% of a visit, well, a question begs is, can it be easily replaced by modern technology? And doctors, if they listen to my video, they're going to be mad. But I would argue that the stethoscope, most often is for show these days, and to make people feel like you're actually doing something. Blood pressure cup, these old ones, and they use the stethoscope and they look at the slope, etc. You can do that very easily with a smartwatch these days. Smartwatches these days. And of course, we don't call them medical tools. They're not medical tools, but in practice, I could totally see HIMSS a year or two from now have the API of a Samsung smartwatch or whatever, the Amazon Band or whatever you call it. Just have it sync with the HIMSS app. Just have your phone's health app sync with the HIMSS app, and then you could get to something like 95% of what they do in a physical. And then I guess you have things like feeling for a lump or feeling for a tumor. I guess you still need to see a doctor for that, but that's like 5%. And most of the time, like for example, a classic you would do at a physical is sometimes if you're a woman, they'll feel your breast to see if you have a tumor just in case. But even if that were to be the case, well, A, you probably noticed that you have a lump, and B, the doctor would refer you to a specialist. So even then, it's a lot of customer service, frankly, the face-to-face doctor visit. And I think HIMSS can get into a situation where they pair a smart ring or smartwatch with the labs. They can get into a situation where their offering does 90 or 95% of what a physical does. So to me, that's extremely, extremely compelling. And this moves me to the next big question, which is, the future of healthcare. And hopefully you can start thinking my vision of the future of healthcare. To me, if I look, and I'll go back to this, if I look at how, for example, Netflix and maybe a little bit of Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, and maybe you have a YouTube Premium subscription, so a total of $35 a month. Well, that disrupted for most Americans cable bills. And cable bills, you may remember, early 2010s, they used to be $180, $190, sometimes more than $200 for basic cable. Right, this was all disrupted by the Netflix business model. Right, music industry in the 90s, the 80s, it used to cost $1 a song roughly. Right, Spotify disrupted that by 5 orders of magnitude. Now, unlimited songs is essentially $10 a month, or free if you're willing to listen to an ad. Tesla is disrupting the dealership model, the car model. Most people don't see that today, just like a lot of people don't see HIMSS. But you see, HIMSS, in my view, they're disrupting the entire healthcare business model. It's healthcare different, totally different. They're disrupting that model because let's assume the typical health journey from the standpoint of the insuree. So you're gonna stay on your parents' plan until you're 26. And then from 26 to 65, you gotta pay for your health on your own. And then after you are 65, you have Medicare that kicks in. And that's, of course, assuming you have an average salary and you don't qualify for Medicaid. That's assuming that. So that's your typical journey. Well, you could go with insurance. And so if your employer pays for it, well, good for you. That's amazing. And a lot of people get insurance for our jobs. But if your insurance doesn't pay for it, according to the ACA website, it's $477 the average cost. But that was in 2024. When I do some research as to the average cost of insurance, I get something closer to $600 or $700. So you're paying probably $600 or $700 a month. So in my calculation, I'm assuming you're paying $500 a month. And, I wanted to choose the NASDAQ, but the savings, if you put the NASDAQ in there, you would save something like $12 million or $13 million in there. So I'm not using the NASDAQ. I'm using a return so low, not even the S&P 500 returns this low. I'm using 7% return. $500 a month over 39 years, right? From age 26 to 65 at 7% return. I don't know where you'd have to go to find such a low return. That's $1.2 million. That would be what you would pay in premiums to cover the gap of age 26 to age 65. And that's even assuming your insurance premium doesn't cost. So $1 million. What you're trying to save is $1 million. And what I'll ask is, could you save $1 million by paying $17 a month for your yearly labs, which is the $199 offer that HIMSS just launched? After 40, let's assume, life being life, let's assume after 40, you need like 1 or 2 pills. Not much. Maybe you need an anxiety pill, and maybe you need, I don't know, like a metformin, some very common pills, or an ED drug and a metformin, whatever. Let's assume you need 2 pills, so that's $100 a month. Okay, so you're at 117, and let's assume over your lifetime you need multiple smartwatches. So what is that gonna be like $300 if you want something nice every 5 years, like $300? Okay, and then you need to save a little bit of money in your HSA just in case you have a bigger issue. And so all of that, like in my view, all of that would amount to, I guess, a few tens of thousands of dollars, maybe $100,000 total, not even, like a few tens of thousands of dollars. And if you're willing to spend a few tens of thousands of dollars, you could save well over $1 million in insurance premiums. And that's just, I think, the math that people are going to catch on. That's the math that people are going to catch on. And the last thing I'll conclude is, of course, there's still things where you need the traditional healthcare system, right? Hospitals, you're still going to need to go in, right? But if you go in without your insurance, just know that the cash prices are much smaller. On this channel, I've covered before, and I think HIMSS should perhaps do a partnership for people who want to do everything cash pay and who prefer cash pay. There's a few clinics that are only cash pay. One of the famous ones is Surgery Center of Oklahoma. But I'm sure you can ask for a cash pay transparent price at your local clinic. And if you see some some, I don't want to say more involved. Yeah, like more involved, more common, perhaps sometimes more scary surgeries. This is how much they cost. So let's take a hysterectomy. So let's assume you have cervical cancer. You need to remove your uterus, right? Big surgery, $12,000. That's the cost, right? Of course, if you were to go for insurance, your insurance would likely be billed like $100,000 or something, right? Another surgery, which I would argue is not a big deal, but happens and oftentimes scares men. It's hernia surgery. Hernia, depending on $6,000 to $8,000. You think you can't have that saved up in an HSA? Most of these things will happen in your 40s or your 50s. So if you think you can't have that saved up in your HSA, no, you can totally have it saved up in your HSA. So to me, people are going to catch on that they're absolutely overpaying for healthcare, and that total care, totally different, is a hell of a lot better deal. And when you have, I guess this is 2 orders of magnitude cheaper to go with HIMSS than to go for a traditional system if you look at it over your entire lifetime. You can't help but not have people notice. People will notice. This is the same history that I've been, pounding the table on Tesla. It costs about $5 worth of electricity to charge a Tesla at home. People are noticing. That's why the Tesla is the best-selling car, right? Netflix, I think they have 300 million subscribers or something like that. People are noticing. Spotify, people are noticing. That's the 0 to 1 playbook. When you make a product 10 times cheaper or 10 times better or 100x better, more compelling because it's 10 times cheaper and 10 times better, right? 10 times 100x. When you do that, people flock to the product. They fight for that product. And that's clearly what we've seen in the revenue growth of HIMSS. I can picture HIMSS Labs being so compelling to so many people. And I think they're going to sell a lot of that product. And there's 300 million potentially could qualify for that product. So it's really outstanding if you ask me. So anyways, this was not investment advice. This is not financial advice. This is not health advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on Patreon. Follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.